Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to a Daftaboutcraft special. If you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll have heard that on our last episode we didn't do our usual hype or tripe feature, and that's because we were waiting for some special beers to be released from Cloudwater. They're now released, the Chubbles bandwagon is in full flow, and we're here to tell you what we think of them.
And now it's time for hype or tripe.
So, it's me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And we're here in South Staffordshire and in Suffolk as usual. And we've got some Chubbles in front of us. This collaboration between the mighty Cloudwater and the Vale from America. We've got one each and we're ready to crack them open.
So, yes, you can't really move for Chubbles at the moment. They're not the easiest to get hold of, although they're probably not the hardest either. We did manage, well, you managed to track them down for both of us, which was very much appreciated.
I remember when we did the episode of Putty from Verdant, we were trying to think of other beers that come out every year that have a huge following, and we couldn't actually, but this is the next big one, isn't it, Chubbles? It's everywhere, and everybody wants it. And from what I've been reading, it sounds like it's absolutely fantastic this year. So I should say there are now 6 different versions of Chubbles available in this series. The brand new one is Chubbles 53 Degrees North, and that was brewed solely in Manchester. The other 5 were all brewed in Manchester and at the Vale Brewery in the US, and they are Chubbles the Original, Chubbles 2, Chubbles 3, Chubbles, and Chubbles 3 Enhanced. And to explain this a little bit more, we're really happy to welcome onto the podcast Connor Murphy, the Engagement and Marketing Manager from Cloudwater, to tell you all about it. And before I hand over to Connor, I've got to say thanks so much for coming onto the podcast to do this, because Connor's whole family has actually been struck down by COVID in the last few weeks, and it's been a really difficult time. So to come on here and do this for us, we're really grateful, and can't thank you enough.
So the story of Chubbles goes back to 2017, when our owner Paul and members of our team had been over to the States on a couple of occasions and met Matt Tarpey, co-founder of the Vale, and some of their team too. They were pretty young at the time. We ourselves were only 2 years old back then. And during these meetings, the teams just hit it off, really. They kind of really enjoyed each other's company. Paul and Matt got on really well and still do to this day. They're good friends. And through that kind of shared experience, through that enjoyment of kind of chewing the fat, just relaxing in each other's company, their beer ideas started to take shape. So they wanted to both do something really different, something that was, for the time groundbreaking. It was the first triple IPA we'd ever brewed. I think similar for the Vale too. We brewed it using, decided upon an English ale yeast with origins in Manchester. So that was a kind of nice twist that made it something of Manchester, and decided to showcase 2 hop varieties that we both love in Citra, which is something that is a variety that we've always used regularly throughout our beers. It provides such a lovely kind of juicy base for a lot of our hop forward beers. And Galaxy, which is a hop that the Vale use an awful lot too. It's got that really rich resinous profile. Tropical fruit, like overripe tropical fruits come through from Galaxy often too. So that kind of combination seemed like a really good fit, with an Enigma thrown into the mix as well. And the Enigma, the Vale hand select, is really, really top quality. It kind of really gives us loads of impact in Chubbles. So it was designed as a real bold expression of those hops, of that yeast, with a really high protein, high oats malt grist. And it just seemed to capture people's imagination at the time. So the Vale released it first, and it was only released in America the first year. Consumers over there loved it, and the Vale's drinkers really, really buzzed off it. So when it came to the second year, they're like, well, we've got to do it again. So Matt got in touch with Paul, and Paul, kind of not wanting to short the customers over here, said, well, how about we brew it at the same time over in Manchester? And when we did that, we got exactly the same response as the Vale had got. People were blown away by this beer. I remember at the time, before I was working for Cloudwater, going down to the old barrel store tap room, people's energy and excitement on Chubbles release day was palpable. It was such an occasion, something so different to what was available widely in the UK at the time. I mean, things have changed now, but back then it really was a point of difference. And just year on year, we've had conversations with the Vale about, is it time to kill off Chubbles? It's a recipe now that's 6 years old. Should we be thinking, move on, do something different? But it's the same with them as it is with us. Every year when the Vale ask people what you want to see from us, their response is largely Chubbles. I think Matt said 60% of responses on their posts on social media asking what their drinkers want to see next say Chubbles. So it's developed its own momentum since, and neither of us feel like we can let it drop. Neither of us feel like we can disappoint customers. And I think that's why a whole series has been built around it. We've added another product to that mix this year because largely responding to fatigue for high ABV last year, we listened to what drinkers were telling us, and that number of tippers released over a small period of time had become a little bit too intense. So we dropped one of those from the mix and added a new beer, Chubbles 53 Degrees North, at 7% rather than 10%. And the idea with that was first to actually go for a cask-only Chubbles. It's just something that was, again, trying to push the envelope a little bit more. A beer that really isn't made for cask in many ways, isn't expected on cask, but that we knew that if we got it right, people would love it. So from that kind of idea of doing a cask Chubbles, we were experimenting with a recipe for that and thought it was a product really ideally suited to keg and can as well. So just tweaked between the cask and the keg versions to bring people something new and something different that's a bit more easygoing.
So which version have you got?
So I've just finished having COVID. As a consequence, I haven't been really in the mood to drink for the sort of a couple of weeks. Never lost taste or smell, which was good, but it hasn't really made me want to drink. So I've got the 7% one because I don't really fancy tackling a tipper just yet, certainly not out of the gate. So I've got Chubbles 53 Degrees North, and that's all I know. It's a 7% beer. It's a nice gold can with some interesting artwork, and that's literally it. There's not really any description about what's in it on the can. Even on Untapped, there's no further description. So I'm in the dark as to what I've actually got apart from a dipper.
A little bit of research tells me, what I can tell you is that this is the newest addition to the Chubbles family, if you want. Mm-hmm. So it's not one they've done before. And I know the hops. You don't know. We could play the hop game if you want.
We can play the hop game, that's fine.
Let's do that then. That will be interesting. I have got Chubbles, which is one of the 10% tippers, so 187 calories per 100 mils as well, in case you were wondering. It's like a nice pudding, that is, isn't it? No pudding for me today.
Mine's 66 per 100
Oh, look at him, the healthy option. Right, who's going to go first?
I'll start because I've got the slightly lesser in strength.
So you were saying that you've had COVID and you didn't drink during COVID. This is the first day you've tested negative. You've had a couple of beers just before this one from our good pals at Copper Beach, which you really loved.
Yes.
So this is one of your first beers post-COVID, so it should hopefully taste amazing. Looks good.
It does. It looks good. It's in my actual Cloudwater glass. I actually own matching glassware for once.
Look at him go.
Now, it actually smells like when the can is slightly over carbonated. It smells like that. So it's not actually massively appealing on the nose. It looks great. It's maybe starting to warm up slightly, and I'm getting a bit of tropical and a bit of stone fruit, but it's not a great nose. Okay, that's not what I expected. Quite dry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It is stone fruit more than it's tropical.
You've got a good shot at this because there's 6 hops involved.
6?
6. 3 on the hot side, 3 on the cold side.
I feel like Simcoe or Mosaic are in there somewhere. Strata.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you whether you're right or wrong yet.
Sure. I mean, I figure there's got to be some Citra.
Okay.
Perhaps some Galaxy. I was trying to think of another one, so I'd got 6. I was going to say Amarillo, but I don't think there is. So I will say, I think Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe, Strata, Galaxy, and something that I haven't got.
Galaxy, yes.
All right.
Citra, yes. Actually, there's 5, not 6. I tell a lie, there's 5.
Okay.
3 in the hot side, 3 in the cold side. One of Citra is in both sides.
Okay.
But in the hot side, you've got Galaxy, Citra, and Eldorado. So you got 2 out of the 3.
Okay.
And then the cold side edition of Citra, Enigma, and Nelson Sauvin.
Ah, okay.
So what they're aiming for is a big punch of tropical fruits. Well, interesting. Well,
For me.
You did say tropical fruits, but you said probably more on the stone fruit side of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, is it good?
It's not bad, but it's not. I mean, perhaps the bigger ones are where it's at.
But don't forget, this is the first time they've done this one. So this is a new one to the Chubbles stable.
I've seen what it's rated on Untapped. I won't be rating it anywhere near that at the moment. It might change while we're talking these through, and I don't think it's a COVID-affected palette or anything.
Okay.
You know when we've talked about Galaxy before and it takes over?
Well, it hasn't done that because it took you a while to find the Galaxy, so it can't be that.
But I feel like it's becoming more dominant. The bit that stands out the most is the end part of the beer, where it's quite dry and a little and not a little bit dank, probably a bit more than that, but not a lot dank. So medium dank.
Medium dankness. But what's the mouthfeel like, Dave?
It is quite full. It's quite soft.
Is it heavy? Are you going to struggle to get through it?
No. I'll get through it very easily, very quickly. It doesn't taste of its ABV at all. Probably feels like it's a 5-ish beer. Yeah, so it's 7, but yeah, punch is lower than that in that sense.
Leave your glass to warm up and you can get through it and then come back to us in a few minutes. I'm going to tell you a bit about mine. I poured it out. So this is Chubbles, which is a 10% triple IPA, which is apparently dripping in squidgy fruits.
Ooh.
So we'll see.
Oh, it looks nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Okay.
It's very full, and my expectation when having a Cloudwater tipper is it's going to be quite sweet and almost orange in colour, but this is more of a deep yellow, and that sweetness actually isn't there. It's not overwhelmingly sweet at all. In fact, there's a little bit of bitterness that I get at the end, but it's definitely not overwhelmingly sweet, which is always my worry with a tipper.
If you sort of had this blind, would you know that this was a collaboration, or would you still think, oh, this is probably a Cloudwater beer? Like,
well, no, actually, I don't think it tastes like your normal Cloudwater tipper, if I'm honest with you. It does taste different. So if you said to me, this is a Cloudwater tipper, I might well say to you, is somebody else involved here? Because it hasn't got that sweetness I would associate with a tipper from them. Yeah, so this is the 6th time that Cloudwater and the Vale have teamed up, and they say that this year they've used a lighter touch, less sweet than previous batches, which would fit in with what I just said about this one. They're talking about mango, melon, pineapple, papaya, offset by oily grapefruit and a rich resinous character. A lot of that's
is
there.
that for the whole series or just for your beer?
I think that's the whole series they're referring to, because all these beers are obviously pretty similar.
Yeah,
pretty similar.
I get some of that with mine for sure.
So we heard from Connor at Cloudwater a little earlier with an overview of the whole Chubbles series. He's kindly recorded a bit more audio for us to tell us how Chubbles has changed over the years.
Daftaboutcraft. People often ask us, has Chubbles changed over the years? And the answer to that is largely no. It has changed, but almost imperceptibly year on year. We make, rather than making wholesale changes to the recipe and switching things up completely, which we don't think would be a faithful representation of Chubbles and of the essence of Chubbles, instead we make gradual tweaks over time, and these might be to account for process changes in our brewery, new techniques that we put into play, whether it's techniques that we use in hopping or at different parts in the brewing process, and also just accounting for changes in taste too. The tastes for high ABV hop forward beer are very different these days than they were back in 2017. Remember, back in 2017, this was a relatively new thing. It was a product that was very different, as I said before. So perceptions of that beer and preferences for how that was brewed are very different to what they are now. And people, I suppose, want thicker, more expressive of the hops, bolder year on year. That's what we've seen. Starting to see a slight change in that now, where maybe people are getting slightly fatigued with that kind of push for ever increasing flavour and body. But that's what we've seen over the years. So Chubbles has been tweaked and refined little by little to reflect those changes, and just to keep it fresh, while still capturing the essence of that first brew of it.
You're listening to Dave B and Dave D on Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
We briefly mentioned Verdant's Putty earlier as another real hype beer, which is they produce a new one every year. How would you rate your version of Chubbles there to Verdant's Putty that we had at the start of the year?
You know what? They're not massively dissimilar. Certainly my version isn't. The thing I was going to say with this, now I've had a bit more of it, you know, when you have a relatively hoppy beer,
mm-hmm.
and it comes out of, say, key keg, and it sort of repeats on you a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's that sort of gassy, but slightly, that keeps doing that. And that, I don't like that as a mark of a beer. That knocks it down a bit for me.
That's really interesting you say that, because I've turned my mic down a couple of times because it's repeated on me a few times as well. Could this almost be a case of it being too fresh?
Well, we did wonder that with the putty, didn't we?
We did, yeah. But this doesn't taste green in the same way that the putty did.
It certainly doesn't taste green. I want to reserve judgment a bit because I've got the can you've got as well to try, and I'm looking forward to trying that. If this was the only experience I had of the Chubbles series all year, or even ever, I'd feel like I don't get it. Like, it's fine, but I've had better beers than this.
Okay.
Quite a lot of better beers than this, actually. This isn't a bad beer, but it's not a beer I'm going to remember in a week. The actual concept and the process, brilliant. Can't fault it. The only thing I would say is I kind of want the product to back it up. Now, it might be that I'll have the other tipper and I'll love it.
Yeah, and what is interesting here is the one that you've got, I think, is the lowest ABV of the series. Yeah, maybe you'd find the other ones better.
More than possible, and I hope so. I don't want to be sort of disappointed by this as a series.
So are you kind of on the fence here with this one? Are you sort of in that middle ground?
It's not Tripe, but it's too far removed from being great for me to be a hype beer. This one in isolation.
Yes.
The series, not a problem. And as I say, I really look forward to trying the other one because I want to see what that's like. And I'm hopeful that's going to be better. But this can't, for me, be a hype beer. What about you?
You know, I almost think we should call this hype, tripe, or ... or on the fence, because we do come across quite a few that are quite clearly never going to be tripe, but they don't quite reach the hype. I mean, technically, if something isn't hype, in terms of this feature, if it isn't hype, it should be tripe. But it's just so difficult to put a beer that is obviously very well made into that category because it's not right. It doesn't live there. Yeah,
you're right. It isn't. It's tough because it isn't tripe in the sense that, yes, it's been well put together. But the problem is this falls into just another beer.
Middle ground territory.
Yeah. And I think yours is better than that.
I think it is, yeah. I'm going to nail my colours to the mast. It's better than that. I can tell a lot of care has gone into this. The fact that it isn't too sweet, they've dialed that back a little bit from previous iterations of it. You know, they've obviously listened to people, changed it slightly, finessed it, and this is great for me. I love this. No, for me, that's hype. So we've got hype and sort of middle ground there. So I think we're leaning towards hype overall. What would be interesting is if we can get you, the listener, to let us know what you think of it. On our socials, we'll put a couple of pictures up and whatever of our cans. Let us know what you think. Is it hype or tripe? From what I've seen all over Untapped, most people are absolutely loving it. If you are, if you're not, let us know. We'd love to know, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, I'd really like to get some views on the 53 Degrees North. Because as you say, this is the newest one. And perhaps this one just needs a bit of refinement. I think the biggest criticism I have of it is it doesn't really do a lot.
Do you know, what is so interesting is that it's preconceptions. Oh, Chubbles is landing on my doorstep. This is going to be great. Here's Chubbles. It's great. You expect it to be great, don't you? And here's a little story. I was at Beer X recently in Liverpool. I'll tell you more about this on the next episode. I went up there with Dan from Copper Beach and John from Copper Beach, and we went to a few seminars, a few talks, and one of them was about off flavours in beers, and we had to taste some beers and work out what was wrong with them. We were told what they should taste like. And after a few minutes, a couple of guys piped up, "This doesn't taste like this for me. It tastes like something else." And it turned out that in a couple of instances, there was 5 different beers, 5 different off flavours we tried. A couple of them had been handed out incorrectly, and they were wrong. But everybody, once they'd got the idea in their head of what they should taste like,
assumed it. Yeah, that was it.
That's
It
what they were
tasted like
getting.
that.
Yeah, except for 2 guys who could tell they weren't right. But everybody else there, "Oh, yeah, this does taste like eggs or whatever it was, you know." But my point being is that once you put that idea in somebody's head of what something should taste like, that's what they get. It's so interesting to drink beers in isolation without having any prior knowledge of what you've got, because it can change your whole conception. My further point being, if people didn't know this was Chubbles, would they be saying, "Oh, this is great, this is great, this is 5 out of 5"?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because if you'd given this to me blind,
Yeah,
I wouldn't be raving about it.
no, you'd say it's
I'd say it's okay. I'd say it's okay. What else? What's next? But and that's where I am with it. Like I'm just not blown away with this one, but I fully appreciate the whole concept, and I'm up for it. And I'm very keen to try the other one that you sourced us, the one you've tried and have really enjoyed.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
So thanks very much indeed for listening to this Hype or Tripe special. Hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. Our next full episode will be released on Monday, April the 11th. So look out for us on your pod provider, and hopefully you'll be joining us in a few weeks' time.